Hello, everyone. It's Father Norm. You may notice that I don't have a typical clergy shirt on today. I'm looking pretty casual. Part of the reason is you're going to be seeing this when I'm on vacation. In fact, at the time of this, I'm doing this ahead of time because when you see it, I'll be in Vancouver in British Columbia and going with a friend and obviously a vacation time and a pilgrimage. I often think of whenever I go on any trip, and maybe for all of us if we think of it as a pilgrimage. In other words, like part of it is how in this journey or this enjoyable new scenery and meeting new people, how we maybe come to know something about God's presence in other parts of the world and other people who maybe come from life very different than we do. I know in Vancouver they mentioned that literally it's a cosmopolitan city area that people come from all over the world and about a number of different ethnicities, backgrounds, races, colors, and so forth that make us this area. This also reminded me then, I've been on other what I call pilgrimages, seeing and getting to know better other people around the world. We're all God's family. One of these, about 15 years ago, I was in Nepal. You may or may not know where that is. That right at the base of Mount Everest. Nepal is there. Kathmandu is the city we were in, 1 million people. And in fact, in that city, they were just at this time developing their first freeway, expressway. Most of the city, they didn't have stop signs. You get stopped at the whatever gets there first goes. So this is the what they were developing further. But at the same time, Nepal is a city that have people of ancient religions. And part of the reason I was there with a friend is they wanted us to talk a little bit about the different faith traditions. And in this case, and probably we need this in terms of religion, in terms of politics, in terms of family life, saying, there's some people that see things very differently here. Hey, it's understandable. God made us all kind of different. But there was some hostility and negativity going on between some people in different religious situations. And we were there to talk about how can we better understand one another's different faith traditions, and even while we differ, but not in a way that's hostile, not in a way that we put somebody else down, differ where we do have our differences. We need this in this culture, differences, but don't keep us from loving and seeking to understand. Real quick, we did a workshop in Nepal with a group of people from a variety of different faith traditions. They were, naming them all, Christian, Jewish, Hindu, Muslim, Sikh, and just a number of other faiths too. But the most common ones there were the Hindu and the Buddhist. And so there was some tension there among some individuals, not necessarily the religions as a whole, but individuals within them. And so we got together and we called people, and there were about 80 people there. We called them to get together with somebody from a different faith tradition, especially because it was Buddhist and Hindu mainly. We said, okay, if you're Hindu, find somebody Buddhist. If you're Buddhist, find somebody Hindu. Don't talk about your religion in terms of its doctrines. They are important. But tell a story of how your particular religious tradition has had an influence on your life, how your sense of God or the divine, how that's influenced you in a good way. And so that happened. They had to interview each other. A Buddhist interviewing interviewing a Buddhist, and hear their story, and then listen and take notes, and then come together at the end of everybody interviewing each other, and they were one-on-one, but there were about 80 people doing this. And then we said, okay, we want to hear from you. What happened when you talked to somebody from the different religious tradition that you weren't very positive about? And so the very first persons who spoke, and I remember this vividly, it was somebody Hindu interviewing somebody Buddhist. And the man spoke. He was Hindu. He was, 75 years old, something like that. And he spoke to the group very honestly. And basically he said, my whole life I've always resented Buddhists because way back, this was 20, 30, 3,000 years ago practically, that Buddhist and Hindu went separate ways, that his faith was Hindu and it was very important to him. And when Buddha came on the scene and Buddhists came on the scene, they kind of broke away from the Hindus. And so because of that, this fellow said he always resented. He had never spoken to a Buddhist ever. He just know he resented them because of something that happened over 3,000 years ago. And talked about that, and then talked about his experience with this Buddhist young man. And he said that he came to a great realization he wished he would had many years ago. He didn't know any Buddhists. He just decided he didn't like them. But then when he interviewed this young man who is Buddhist, talked about his story, talked about how through his Buddhist faith, he had a deep compassion and a deep sensitivity to people who were hurting or people who needed healing or people who were going through anguish. And he talked about how in his Buddhist faith, that for him, there was a big emphasis that one of the greatest things he could do was show compassion, especially to people who are different, especially to people who are hurting. The Hindu heard this young man's story and he said, wow. He said, I had only seen Buddhists in a negative light. Now I meet this young man. He's of his Buddhist faith. And what that calls him to is a greater sensitivity, understanding, and compassion for others. And here I am, the Hindu, and I'm thinking our faith has it all. I don't know what good any Buddhist can have. But he listened carefully with his heart open. We said, be open to this Buddhist man sharing his story. And this Hindu older man said, I have been touched. I have been changed. Yes, we have two different faith traditions, but in each of them, God's goodness and love can come forth as this young man did. And I apologize to this young man and to anybody when anybody of you that are Buddhist and all of a sudden I only see you in a negative, resentful way. I'm sorry for that. Our faiths that are different should be bringing us together in the common bond of love. Wow, great story. I remember that. For all of us, maybe we need to hear where somebody else is coming from to better understand and care for them and not put them down.